now about halfway up, leg number 3. The second beat to windward, it's getting fresher. 18 knots, gusting 20, and the seas are getting bigger. This is becoming quite a tough test now. And Team New Zealand comfortably in front of One Australia. Now there seems a problem on One Australia. See, the backstay's gone loose and the forestay. There is definitely a problem aboard One Australia. Their rigging has gone slack. Why? The boat is turning into a banana. There's real problems here. The crew are summoning the chase boat to come alongside. There are real problems. The boat has snapped in two. The structure has given in. One Australia is taking on a lot of water. This is very serious. Well, now the crew have got to move quickly. They could be in serious trouble, and they're getting off quickly. They could be in danger if they get caught on that rig. They've got to get off the boat fast. The boat is bending. It is going down fast. Look at the 3 on the foredeck. What on earth are they doing? They've got to get off. There's the Team New Zealand chase boat, and they've gone along to pick up the crew. This is incredible. A Formula One racing yacht is breaking up before our eyes and sinking. This is yachting's answer to the Titanic. Look at it go down. They're panicking on getting the crew, making sure they've got the heads, but look how quickly the boat is being sucked into the Pacific. This is incredible. Now you see it, now you don't. In just over a minute from the time the crew started jumping off, the boat has disappeared. In just over 30 seconds from the time the deck was awash, One Australia has been sucked to the bottom of the Pacific.
Good morning, and I would review, I mean, I was ad-libbing that off the top of my head, and I'm not sure I would use some of the phrases I did that day, but it was tense. And so let's introduce some of the key players in that amazing day. Ian Murray here, of course, well known as the regatta director of this America's Cup 34, San Francisco 2013. Ian won the first of his world 18-foot skiff titles back in 1977. I remember watching him win it on the Waitemata Harbour in Auckland, the last one in 1980. In 1983, he was invited by Sid Fisher to steer Advance, and who would later launch the America's Cup career of Jimmy Spittle. And in 1987, it was Ian who headed the Kookaburra defence in the America's Cup, the brilliant America's Cup out of Fremantle. And then he was Spirit of Australia, wasn't it, Ian? I think in 1992. Anyway, that's enough. He's had an awful long history in the America's Cup and knows what he's doing. John Bertrand, legend in world sailing, 1983, made John a sporting legend as well as an America's Cup legend. Skippered the first Challenger to beat the United States after 132 years. And then, of course, Dennis Conner was able to challenge for it to get it back. Now, I've just looked at my notes here. Murray Jones, you're here anyway. I can't find what I can tell. Murray Jones has won the, I'll try and find as I'm talking, but Murray Jones has won the America's Cup 4 times. He was in 1995 with Team New Zealand, the America's Cup's now New Zealand's Cup. He was the guy who was going high up in the rig, spotting the wind shifts or what wind there was in the very light conditions. A double Olympian as well, and so Murray was the tactical strategist in that campaign as well. And there are many others, and we can see why we call it the America's Cup family. Rod Davis, the helmsman of One Australia, now head coach of Emirates Team New Zealand, who are racing later today, and has got some pressing issues and why he can't be here. Grant Simmer, then design coordinator for One Australia, now the general manager of Oracle Team USA, and the brilliant pictures taken by George Johns, who was the cameraman not far behind and who shot the video you've just been watching and is now doing a brilliant job for America's Cup Television. So March the 6th, 1995, the Louis Vuitton Cup semi-final, One Australia 35 against Team New Zealand's NZL 38. The best two challengers going head to head, 20 knots of wind out on the Pacific Ocean out off Point Loma in San Diego. The swell and the chop you can see, and NZL 38 was in front. And so to pick it up from there, greetings Murray Jones, lovely to have you here. What leg of the race was it? Can you remember that? And what were the conditions like?
Yeah, I think it was the third leg of the race, and yeah, the conditions were pretty nasty. It was quite a swell and a chop on top of the swell. We were not very keen on racing at the beginning of the day, really, because the forecast was for pretty bad conditions, and you know, we would have been happy to stay back at the barn and preserve our boat. But you know, we were out there, it was racing and it was tough, it was hard conditions. You know, we were being careful for the boat as well as trying to race the boat.
John Bertrand, welcome, great to see you here. You were behind a little bit, we could see not too far behind. You're working hard to get back in the action and seriously challenge NZL 38. Did you have any concerns about the conditions that day?
Yes, we did. You know, to put it in perspective, San Diego, that time of the year, the boats are really designed for probably 8 to 12 knots of true wind. And, you know, we are talking about on the edge. It's actually a very interesting background to this thing, because people focus on the, you know, the so-called disaster of the boat breaking, but that's the reality of living on the edge. And so we're sailing in extreme conditions for the structural integrity of the boats. We didn't realise that we had actually a hot spot of stress concentration in the deck that only became clear later. But putting all that aside, they were very, very difficult conditions. The wave frequency was such that the boats was coming off waves and pitching and crashing through the waves. The forces were way overload for everyone. On that same day, Dennis Connor's keel started to rip off out of the boat. America cubed mast broke. The American, they were sailing on a similar course. And a lot of damage done generally throughout the fleet. So the bottom line is we shouldn't have been racing. Let me say though that when the boat broke and sank, it was a horrifying experience. And it was something that we'd never ever contemplated. You know, we went through the if-onlys. If a mast broke, what you did. If someone was injured, we had contingency plans. But the concept of a boat breaking in two and sinking and losing the whole thing was totally off our radar screen. And it was all part and parcel of you know, the horrific aspect. Then back in Australia, to put it more in a high level context, not just focusing on this thing, this project represents the pride of Australia. You know, it was a $26 million program, big budget in those days. We're talking about 1995. Ian Murray was involved. We had some Rod Davis had the best of the best. The idea was a world best project. And when the boat broke up and sank, first of all, it was the shock and horror. And then the element was who was responsible. This is back in Australia. And the first thing I did, through a guy called John Fitzgerald, who was just a terrific communications expert, I wrote a letter effectively, which was published in most of the newspapers in the country at the time, on the fact that we are living on the edge with a project like this, and we are proud of it. Just like in the world of Formula 1 motor racing, the engines blow, cars smash, people get killed. It doesn't stop the world of Formula 1, it doesn't stop the world of the America's Cup. So even though you know, the boat broke and sank, that's the game that we're playing. And if we weren't on the edge, then we weren't going to be competitive. And the fact is that you know, it was a catastrophic failure. We then revamped our pace boat, the first boat, and that probably was the galvanising aspect of the team. They came together, our group came together like we'd never seen before. And we sailed our training boat against all the other nations. We beat everyone in the Louis Vuitton Cup except Team New Zealand, took a race off them. And Team New Zealand went on to whitewash the US of A to win the America's Cup and take it to Auckland, New Zealand. So the whole story was really, really interesting. Something we're very proud of, to be honest, in terms of the way that we put the program together. The sinking, of course, was not part of the program, but the fact is that's what the America's Cup is, and you've got to, that's the reality of what we have here. So when I see, the disaster we had, of course, with Bart losing his life, that's absolutely terrible. Boats losing equipment in this current series. This is version 1 of these new flying machines, but that's what the America's Cup is. This is living on the edge. And from my perspective, having competed in 5 America's Cups over a 30-year period, I'm proud that that's what the America's Cup represents.
Ian Murray, what were your roles at the time and what were you doing at this point in the race?
We'd just gone around the bottom mark, and as everyone's identified, it was a bit of a rough day, and the race committee out there that day actually pondered whether they should start the race, and they turned it over to the competitors to see if the competitors want to race. And as in any good Australia-New Zealand sporting contest, our egos probably got ahead of our brains a little, and of course we want to race, and off we charged. And whether it be a Bledisloe Cup or any form of sporting contest between Australia and New Zealand, we probably got ahead of ourselves and forgot why we're actually in San Diego. Unfortunately, the boat broke, and my job was, I was a sort of a strategic advisor, I guess, sort of round the runner sometimes, around that part of the boat, and I was one of the designers of the boat and sort of the contact, the communication between sailors and designers in that role. We'd just gone round the leeward mark, and unfortunately we'd had a drive shaft failure on the port side main winch, and so we had cross-winched the headsail to the leeward runner winch, which placed more stress on the deck structure of the boat as well. A bigger compression load, and whether that contributed or not, or whether towing out through the surf coming out through Mission Bay that day had contributed, or the previous day we'd hit something in the water and badly damaged enough a high tensile steel wing that we actually had to cut it off and replace it, whether that had contributed. I think they're all things that we're never really going to know the answer to, but the boat broke, and it became obvious. I think the initial thought was the mast had broken, there was a big crack, and a conversation started on board, what's gone wrong, and then quickly identified that the boat was broken, and it's sure the crew separated either side of the break. Some guys were in the front. We'd just gone around the market, pulled spinnakers down, and there was a lot of water inside the boat as well, and that was unusual. So we think there probably had been a fracture earlier in the day for this water to get in between the primary bulkheads on the boat, and carrying that extra weight of the water that shouldn't have been in there probably increased the loads in the boat and added to what happened. So there was this conversation that went on, and you might remember that Larry Klein had, not long before this event, had perished up here in San Francisco, the US Yachtsman of the Year, on an Ultimate 30 just off Alcatraz, and I think it was all very clear in our minds that jumping into cold water and rough conditions and wet weather gear and sea boots and all of that sort of stuff, was something that needed to be considered. Having said that, I think JB, I think you were the first one off. I don't think you made it.
Just let's pick that up. What happened in the next few minutes after you heard the crack and you stopped, and as the videos captured, the rigging went slack. So, John, what happened over the next few minutes after that?
Well, one of the, these strange things that happen, the laconic sense of humour and communication in times of crisis. And let me also say that John Longley and Skip Lissaman are here from our Australia 2 team. We're having a reunion tonight, so welcome, boys. But Rocket Rod, who's steering the boat, Rod Davis, who you all know, he says to the big fella, big fella, what's happening? We're going to sink. And Ian turns around and he says, yes, we're going to sink. And then also on the boat was David Barnes, okay, Olympic gold medalist, 470 class. He was our coach from New Zealand. And we just bought a whole bunch of Sebago sea boots at a huge discount. We paid, I think, $30 each for a pair of sea boots. We were all the boys were very proud of these. We're talking about a $26 million project here, right? So we're all wearing our new Sebago boots that someone had negotiated. And so it was clear that it was time to abandon the ship, as they say. And I look around at Barnsley, and I think I mentioned, I said, boys, take your boots off. You know, not a good thing. You know, you jump in the water with your boots on, they sort of suck you down. It's not a good thing in cold water. Not part of the script. So I see Barnsley taking his boots off, and then in his own innumerable manner, he puts his boots upside down underneath his foul weather jacket to create basically a life vest. And he jumps in feet first and paddles away, dog paddles away, with a big smile on his face. He kept his boots. No one else could save their boots.
I kept mine.
Did you? You did?
$30.
So all these funny little strange things that happen at a time of crisis. And there we go. So the big fella kept his boots and Barnsley kept his boots.
So Ian Murray, there were crew below deck, and of course we know this boat went down quickly, so you can get sucked down with the vortex of that, and were all the crew good swimmers?
No, you see those guys up on the bow. There's three of them up there. There's Billy Bates, Mark Richards, who's commonly known these days as the skipper of Wild Oats that we sail on in Sydney, and Billy Bates, who'd been the sewer man. He was, I think, the last person to get out of downstairs. But you can see up there in the bow, there's Don McCracken, who was second bow behind Al Smith, and Rico's holding his hand because Donnie couldn't swim. The forward hand, second bow, he was a dog paddler at best.
Let me also say that Donnie had actually done a round the world Whitbread race or Volga at that stage.
It's a long way to swim down.
So long story short, Mark Richards, if you look at the bow, actually pushed Don McCracken in and probably saved his life, because once that's going down, as you can see, this vessel or many of the vessels that have been sunk around the world, notably in World War II, they just were sucked down, the crew was sucked down with the vortex on. So then to Murray, Team New Zealand support boat, when did you know that there was something serious, and when you should stop racing, and when your support boat should come back and red light warning?
Well, you know, I was on the yacht racing, and so the first thing we noticed is we would sort of had a loose cover on the Australian boat, and we were on starboard tack and out to windward, and they were underneath our boom, probably, I don't know, 200 or 300 metres below us. And someone said, something's wrong with their forestay, you know, because the forestay, the luff of the jib went slack, you know, with what could have happened, you know, broken a runner or whatever. And then...
Barnesy, you're on port tack, mate.
Anyway, and then we sort of, there's something wrong with it, you know, like the hull looked odd, you know, and they said, well, they've got a structural problem, and all this happened within, you know, less than probably 30 seconds. We think, what's going on, you know? And then, so then everyone on the crew was sort of looking under the boom, and they'd sort of lost focus on what they were doing with their jobs, and just focused on the Australian boat and what was happening. And then, you know, right before our eyes, next thing the thing's folding up and disappearing, and on our boat everything just went completely quiet. No one said a word, and it was a really sort of sobering moment, really, that we were concerned that someone, you know, was in the boat, or, you know, there was people hurt, and we had no idea what was going on. And yeah, it was sort of a horrible feeling, because then in the end the radio came on from the race communication that everyone was okay, and obviously we didn't really have communication with our chase boat, but if we'd had anything to do with it, we probably wouldn't have allowed them to go and pick the guys up. We'd have left them in the water a bit longer.